how to know which moves to use in games, how to get more confident. There's a lot that goes into this. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the first episode of this little mini podcast series that I'm going to be doing. The first episode here, we're just going to be answering questions from a Q&A that I posted on my Instagram. The first question is how to know which moves to use in games. I think a lot of players think that you need to have almost like a checklist. Like, in this situation, I need to do this move. In this situation, I need to do this move, etc. Now, this is partially true, but it's actually a little bit oversimplified. At any given point within a game or within a live situation, you have a lot of options you can do. You know what I mean? Like, if someone's holding the ball at the top of the key, you can go right, you can go left. It's up to you. You can step back, you can snatch, you can hesitate. There's a bunch of different options you can do. Now, it probably makes more sense to do a spin, for example, when the defender is starting to cut you off around the rim. But you don't necessarily have to go and do a spin. You can kind of keep the defender on your hip. Why does a player snatch versus continue to move towards the rim? There's not really a necessary reason. Like, a lot of times, I see guys on YouTube and on social media, they're like, oh, well, when the defender starts to run rather than slide, that's when you snatch. That's not true at all. I mean, sometimes, yeah, players will snatch, but a lot of times they'll just keep going towards the rim and they'll just finish at the rim. All right, so it's not necessarily that you have to have a black and white, checklist of I need to do this move when the defender does this. Basketball is not black and white. You have options all the time. And your job as a basketball player is to get as skilled as possible so that you have all these options in your toolbox, and then you can use them however you'd like. So, you can go left and step back, or you can go left and go all the way to the rim, or you can go left and snatch, or, there's a bunch of things you can do. So it's not necessarily like all these options are going to be for this exact moment or this exact moment. Your job is to get all of those options in the tool bag, and then from there, you're just kind of self-organized. It also helps to play and watch film to see what moves are working and when, but like, if I just work on a snatch constantly, just by myself, and I never actually do it against a defender, I might be a little uncomfortable doing it in games. So that's when you wouldn't actually use it. All right, next question here is how to get shiftier. There's a lot that goes into this. Part of it's going to be ball control. So your hands have to be able to push it outside of your frame. Without that, you won't be able to even get into low positions, right? Because the ball is just sort of in front of you, so you can't drop your shoulders. But we want to be comfortable in low positions. When I say low, I do not mean squat. I mean shoulders dropping low. I often say, and I have a whole separate video on this, I often say, think about what track stars look like when they are coming off the blocks. Shoulders drop. That's exactly what we want to look like. But the other component to that is that we want to be very comfortable with our hips rotating in. So that's when you'll see players, their knee and their shin gets very close to the ground. And what this means is that they're just shifting their weight. Either they're shifting their weight to make a defender think they're going one way. So think of like a crossover, like AI crossing Jordan, or they're stopping, which is also just shifting your weight, but it's in a different manner, right? So with this hip rotation, what that really just means is that you're decelerating. And a deceleration means you're either stopping or you're changing direction, which is another form of stopping. You're just now stopping and going the other direction, right? So we want to get extremely comfortable in those positions. That's going to be the major component of being a shifty ball handler. So if you look at the shiftiest players, they're all very, very comfortable dropping into these positions, and it's regardless of height. So Kemba Walker and Kyrie Irving, they're smaller players, but then I can show you clips of Kevin Durant, Paul George, also in these positions. So it's just about being able to have your body comfortable enough where your hips are rotating in, you're good with those low shin angles, you're good at decelerating, and your body is just comfortable in those positions, moving into them and moving out of them. All right, so we really have to kind of focus on that mobility aspect in order to be a shifty ball handler. Okay, next question here says how to get more confident. Again, this is another whole separate video that I have, but to give you just like a couple tips here. If you're asking because you're a player who you think that the only thing that is missing from your game is confidence, I urge you to not think like that. You're likely not the player where it's like, I have all the skill, I have all the athleticism, I have all the IQ, I'm just not confident. It's very rare that there's players like that. So the main thing for you is to get as good as possible physically. You cannot convince yourself that you are good and make yourself confident if you're not good. Right? Your body knows. Now, there are certain players that confidence is going to be, a main component that they need to work on. Now, you probably want to work both on the mental aspect and the physical aspect kind of at the same time. So what I'll say about the mental aspect is, if we have a player that is good but has no confidence, that often means they're in their own head. And what I mean by in their own head is they're not in their body. So there's two things you can kind of be in, right? You can be up here, or you can be kind of present in your body. We want to be present in our body. So think about, like, let's take it away from basketball for a second. If I'm, sitting and I'm working, I'm writing something down, and my mind is sort of wandering off and thinking about, TV or, a fight that I had or something like that, then I'm not actively present in the activity that I'm doing. And so that means I'm sort of in la la land. If you've ever read a book and you keep having to reread that line, it's because your mind is wandering. So you're not present. And so what I mean by being in your body is being present. If you can get present during games, during live situations, that is where the confidence will come. Because when you're not confident, that means you're scared of the future, which means you're not present, right? You're not in the present, you're in the future, or you're kind of dwelling on the past, like if you made a mistake or something like that. So again, you're not in the present. So you're either in the past or the future, neither of which exists. The only thing that exists is that present moment. And that's what flow state is getting into the present moment. So the better you are at getting into that moment, the more confident you will be. A couple really easy ways to do that is we call it a body scan, which is like if you're sitting down on a chair like I am, you kind of feel where your body is. So I can feel my feet on the ground, I can feel my butt on the chair, I can feel my back on the chair, etc. If you're obviously playing basketball, you could feel the ball, or you could feel your feet on the ground. That kind of grounds you into that moment. Another thing is just really deep breaths. As cliche as it is, that really helps ground players. So that is one of the main things to get players to be more confident. Obviously, there's a lot more that goes into that. But that's going to be one of the main things. Next question here is weak hand. How to get your weak hand better. Now, I'm actually going to give you a tip that has nothing to do with basketball. Obviously, working on, your left hand if you're right-handed, your right hand if you're left-handed, like dribbling and shooting and finishing at the rim and all that stuff, that's important. But I think the easiest way is to literally just do stuff with your weak hand that is not basketball related. So like household stuff. So, opening a jar, for example, washing the dishes, brushing your teeth is a really easy one, eating, even like writing stuff down. Like I remember when I was in college, I wouldn't actually submit anything, but I used to practice writing my name with my left hand. And that type of stuff really just gets your dexterity in that hand a lot better. And that helps immensely on the court, like so much you wouldn't believe. And obviously, also working, on finishing at the rim and everything like that is going to make it even better. But it'll help you out a lot by just making that fine motor control with your left hand generally better, right? If you can make it generally better, that transfer to the court won't be a huge jump. Last question here is just how to get faster. So again, big topic. A speed program really should be taking quite a long time. But if you are overweight, that's the first thing you should look at. If you look at the fastest players in the world, they are lean. Most of them, right? Of course, you have Zion Williamson, who's a little bit bigger, but the majority of them are going to be on that leaner side where, you can see their abs, you can see their veins, that kind of thing. Now, if you're naturally fast already and you have a little bit of weight on you, maybe you should keep it. So there's a, sort of a balance here where we want to be lean, but we don't want to be so lean that we're, kind of getting bullied on the court. So there's that, good balance there. The next two things I'll talk about is general strength. So that means we actually want to be quite strong through our lower body. So that's your hips / glutes, your quads, your hamstrings, and your calves. Right. So that is where general weightlifting is really going to help. So you can do, any squat movement, any hinge movement, so Bulgarian split squats, RDLs, things like that. You want to build up your base in order to be strong. And the last component is going to be getting it so that your feet are better at popping off the ground. So this is where plyos are really going to help, because when you're running, the ground contact times when you're sprinting, they're really, really short. You're trying to hit the ground and pop off right away. So we want to do a lot of short ground contact plyos. So think of like a drop jump where you get off a box, as soon as you land, you pop up. So you're really not like sinking into it and trying to jump as high as you can. That's a kind of a different sort of plyo. It'll help too, but this is a different quality that we're training here. Overall, sprints are really going to help. And then the other thing that I'll really say is I think players need to do uphill sprints or sled sprints a lot more often, right? Because they are short bursts where you're going out for like, let's say 5 or 10 yards up a hill, and you're really going against some heavy resistance. Or if you're doing a sled, again, some heavy resistance. So that's really helping that first step and those first few steps with explosion, which is what basketball is all about. Right, so we really want to make it so that those first few steps are powerful and explosive. This is partially, weightlifting, right? But it's less weightlifting, it's more explosive power training. So the other stuff that I was talking about is more just like, strength training. This is more power. So we want to do that as well. All right, thanks for watching, guys. I'll be doing more of these kind of mini podcast series. We'll throw in Q&As here and there. If you guys like this video, don't hesitate to like, comment, and subscribe, and follow me on the rest of my socials. See you guys.